Hi, I'm Grady, and this is my take on the Hotel Monterey for the film assessment, the triple take of film analysis vlog. So, in this first vlog, I'm just giving my first impressions. So, watch the Hotel Monterey, and first I was a little confused whether or not it was a silent film, so I had to look it up. Um, it is in fact supposed to be a silent film. When I first got into it, I was a little disoriented. They spend a solid 2 or 3 minutes focused on a mirror overlooking the lobby. So I didn't understand if I was supposed to be looking through a window or if it was an actually mirror. And then as we move into the film, I realized we are actually in the lobby, so that was a little bit of a surprise. And then we get into the lobby, we see people coming into the hotel. Then we get to a shot of the elevator, and it does look like all of the residents or all of the guests of this hotel are like elderly people. The lighting is dim, and the camera either pans, so like it pans to a new perspective of the hotel, or it'll cut, like jump cut, to a different perspective, and then hold that perspective for a few minutes. And this is pretty consistent throughout the whole film. Um, I would say that this movie is different from like mainstream narrative movies, primarily because in narrative movies and in mainstream movies, there's a defined plot. There's like a protagonist. There's a script. There's music. There's some sort of engagement with the audience. Um, Whereas the Hotel Monterey, this film felt more like I was touring the hotel, which I think was the intended point behind the film. But it didn't do anything to try and captivate the audience or make the audience feel like this was time well spent. It was an hour-long film. Um, One moment particularly that stuck with me was by the end of the film, we had moved from the elevator to one floor to going around that floor and looking around into particular rooms. And then we went back to the hallway, we went to the stairwell. But then by the end of the film, we got to a window. And after that window, we went outside. And once we went outside, instead of the normal, like holding the camera shot for 3 or 4 minutes, it was a rolling clip. So we got to see the panorama of the New York skyline, and got to see birds flying. And it wasn't just the camera rolling, but it was showing and it was actually moving. And that really stood out to me because it was separate from the rest of the film, and it really highlighted, at least for me, that this is a real building, like this is a real place, and that really helped clear up some of my confusion about this film. But overall, I would say, 10 out of 10, would watch it again for 2 more vlogs. So this was the first vlog, episode number 1. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Hi, I'm Grady. Welcome back to episode 2 of the um, vlogs. Um, Today we'll be talking about the mise en scène, the sound, the editing, and the cinematography that was used in the Hotel Monterey. So for mise en scène, one scene that stuck it out to me in particular was this scene where we hold a shot of one of the guests just sitting in his room, and there's no action, there's no movement. There's nothing happening, and we just hold this shot for minutes and minutes. And this stood out to me as mise en scène because we start in the basement or in the lobby with the tattered wallpaper and the yellow lights, and we move up to one of the guest room and it's harsh fluorescent lighting and the bed's unmade, but he's in a tuxedo, and we don't really get a read into each character's lives, but we understand that these characters are not necessarily what the story's focusing on, but showing us the type of people who come into this hotel and the type of people who exist in this world. Um, Further treating it like a tour of the hotel instead of a showcase into someone's life or narrative. Um, and then we move on to the cinematography. So a little earlier in the movie, around 4 minutes, we get to see a long focusing shot of the elevators. Now, we're not focusing on anyone in particular. He just holds the camera on the elevators. And I found this particularly interesting and shows the cinematography very well because the camera's not moving. It's very stationary. He doesn't use a lot of pans or zooms. Um, he just holds on these elevators, and we don't focus on any of the characters coming in or out. And as the screen keeps moving, we see more and more characters coming in. Um, and then we cut to the inside of the elevator, and each choice to hold and show each shot, um, we get the feeling that time passes. We get the feeling that none of these characters are particularly relevant to this story, but instead that we're focusing on what's in each shot as the audience. And I think the director did that very well. Finally, we move on to editing and sound. Now, in those brief clips, you might notice there was no sound in this movie, and that's because there is no sound in this movie. This is a silent movie, and I think that's done intentionally to sort of draw out the aspects of, hey, we're not supposed to be hearing anything. We're not supposed to be involved in any of the characters' dialogue. We're not supposed to hear the, New York street sounds. We're here, we're in this hotel, and I think by not having any sound, that's done very effectively. Um, you might also notice that each edit is is few and far between. The only edits that we really see are jump cuts. So he was in that room looking at that guy, and he cut down to the hallway scene. And then the elevators, he films the elevators, and then he cuts to the inside of the elevator. So each cut takes us to a different place inside of the hotel. Each cut takes us to a different viewing or a different tour aspect of the hotel that he wants the audience to focus on. And I think by holding the scene long enough to make us as the audience visualize every detail is really well done and really important. So that was vlog number 2. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll be back in the next one. See ya. Hello, and welcome back to the third and final vlog for the Hotel Monterey and the film assignment. This vlog is about connecting the dots. When I first watched the film, I didn't like it. I was confused. I didn't understand what I was supposed to be watching. It wasn't appealing to me. It wasn't satisfying to me, and I think I missed the point. But after doing a deeper dive into the film and watching it again for the third time, I realized that it's not about following a character or a story or a plot. We're looking into the life or the day in the life of the hotel. The yellow lights and the fluorescent lights and the messed up wallpaper and the unmade bed and the guys in tuxedos and the women in dresses, the New York skyline. We're not looking just at these blatantly like I thought the first time, but instead it's showing us the history of the hotel as the audience, the importance of it, the significance of it. It's giving us a glimpse into this historic place in New York that I didn't really recognize on my first watch. I did notice some patterns on my third watch after watching three times. One major pattern that stood out to me was how the director had this habit of going from a long shot, like no panning, just holding the camera, and then he would make a cut and the camera would be panning. So the next shot would be panning, then he'd cut back to the holding, and he would repeat this throughout the whole film. Most of the time it was varying in length, so the rolling or the panning and the zooming shots were not always as long as the shots that were just stationary, but that was one major pattern I noticed throughout the film, is that the director chose to use the cinematography and editing in that way to jump between movement and stationary viewing. And I think the reason he did that is because when the camera was moving, it was more of there's motion in this scene. This is a lived-in sort of place. Like in the bedrooms or the hallways, like you're meant to keep going. Or not the bedrooms, sorry, just the hallways and like the lobby. When we first get the pan of the lobby is you're meant to keep, going and keep things moving. But in places where you would hold the camera, like in front of the elevators, like in the bedrooms with the stationary people, like inside the elevator, this is a place where you would spend a lot of time in a hotel. You're coming and going, right? So the hotel bay is something you'd encounter a lot. Your room, something you'd encounter a lot. And the hallways and the inside of the elevator as well is something you'd spend a lot of time in. But the hallways, you're not spending a whole lot of time there. You're not spending a whole lot of time in the lobby. So we just kind of pan across that. We pan through that. I think that was a really creative choice by the director. I could connect this film to two films that we watched in film class. I could connect it to the film October. It is a silent film. It's hard to understand the pacing of the film. It's hard to understand initially, why am I watching this film? Why should I be involved? What am I looking for? And then the second film I could connect it to would be The Conversation, mostly because that film uses a lot of hotel elements, so it's more of a mise-en-scène and setting sort of thing than anything else plot-wise. But the harsh fluorescent lighting in the hotel room that's in The Conversation, equally applicable to the Hotel Monterey, where the hallways are dimly lit, but the room itself was incredibly bright and had harsh fluorescent lighting. And yeah, so I got a few notes here. Just some general thoughts, what movies could it be? What stood out to me, what patterns did I notice, and then what I saw on my third watch. So those were just some notes that I took throughout the movie. My third watch. This is my last vlog. This is very fun. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later, alligator.